Is it all right if I do a little preaching this morning? March 19th means that it's going to be lecturing and teaching and not much preaching. A little bit of preaching, but I think I want to preach this morning. If y'all talk to me, I'll try to preach a little bit. Okay. Job, for some reason, is suggesting that he would rather be dead than alive. For he says, Lord, I wish that you would hide me in a grave. I'm going to say it one more time. Look at the text. Job says for some reason he is suggesting to all of us and to him that he would rather be dead than alive. He says that apparently it's safe being in a grave. There is no pain in a grave. There is no suffering. There's no more worrying about life's situation. It's safe. You are just sleeping because John said, blessed are the dead who die in the Lord. But Job requests of God, while I'm in the grave where there is no trouble, please don't forget about me. Because the reason why I don't want you to forget about me is because I was made to praise. I was made to praise your mighty name. But because I am in the grave, I just want you to remember me because I can no longer praise you. Make no mistake about it. All of us at one time or another have experienced this Job situation. Don't sit there like you ain't had no trouble. Let me assure you, if you've had no trouble in your life, just keep on breathing. You don't have to search for trouble or put a warrant out to trouble or to arrest trouble. Trouble will find you quicker than right now. Trouble will come knocking on your door, invited or uninvited. Trouble will find you. Y'all don't have to talk if you don't want to, but if you just keep on living, can I get somebody in here to testify that you were not looking for trouble, but trouble sure enough came your way? Sooner or later. But if you really put the book of Job under a microscope, you would discover that Job's key theme, Job's main focus, unknown to him, is trouble. Because Job was an upright man, which leads me to say you can be doing much good and run into much trouble. Job was actually written so we could learn and observe through Job how God intends for his children to handle trouble. Well, how many of you today really know and believe that trouble will find you? Let me inquire, when trouble comes your way, how do you handle trouble? Just indulge me just for a few moments. I'm going to give you a few reasons on how trouble can find you. Then I think I'm going to take my seat. Number one, trouble might show up in your life because of the choices. Because of the choices that we have made. Is that right? Come on, talk to me. Because of the choices that we have made. There are times in our lives that trouble has no intentions of coming our way. We just bring trouble upon ourselves. Picking the wrong friends. Instead of leading somebody, they leading you. Turn to your neighbor and say, neighbor, my fault. Or you didn't say it loud enough. Turn to the other neighbor and say, neighbor, my fault. Some of that trouble that you are dealing with this very minute, you should confess right now and say, neighbor, my fault. Going places where you know sooner or later something is bound to happen, you ought to turn to your neighbor and say, neighbor, my fault. I know some of you didn't take no drugs, some of you did, some of you ain't smoking, but some of you lying. Neighbor, my fault. Having the wrong lifestyle, as a result, you are dealing with him. Don't get mad at me. I'm just telling you what's going on. Say, neighbor, my fault. Dealing with the wrong woman, neighbor, my fault. My fault. You getting married and think because you marry him, if he'll start working. But if he didn't marry before he got to you and you got married, how you think he's gonna work? She is not sensitive enough. She wasn't sensitive before you married her. You thought after marrying her you could change her? Say, neighbor, my fault. You cannot sow wild oats and then ask for a good crop. I wish somebody talked to me, neighbor. My fault. Reason number 2. Trouble will show up just because we are living in a sin-sick world. David said we are born in a sinful world. Look at a man who never smoked a day in his life and the doctor says you have terminal cancer. Eat healthy, go to the gym every day, and you hear somebody tell, so-and-so had a heart attack and he died. What about the child who has obeyed his parents and the child is a model child and you receive a call, parents, at midnight, there's been a terrible accident and your child was hit by a drunk driver, and I'm sorry to tell you, they're dead. What about that husband and wife who loves each other? They plan to start a family, and while in labor, the wife dies. I tell you, we live in a sinful world. What about sleeping in your home at night and a bullet comes through the wall? You take it from there. A person can go crazy trying to figure out why trouble comes their way for no apparent reason. Why does trouble just show up? Well, trouble will show up to test your spiritual growth. Trouble can and will show up even when you are faithful. I'll say it one more time. Trouble will show up even when you are faithful. I was going through the Bible. You know how you just bruise through different texts and different characters because you've been going through them so long, and all of a sudden I asked this question: how could Elijah be translated and Elisha die of old age? Y'all ain't it. It's God's will. How is it that some die young, others die older or middle age? It's not always God's will. It's the choices that we make. I think we should be careful on how we judge folk because of situations and circumstances, because you don't know why they're going through. You may think it's their fault, but it could be that they are just living in a sinful world. Are y'all walking with me? There are times in our lives where if it had not been for me just walking into church and somebody hugging me and saying, oh, it's going to be all right. That's how I made it. Or y'all don't have to talk if you want to. Reason number 3 is found over there in 2 Kings chapter 5. Don't go there. Just study later. Dealing with Naaman. You remember Naaman, don't you? He was the captain of the Syrian host. He was admired by the masses. Whatever he did, he always came out on top. You know, in some folk who every time they do something, they don't never get slapped down. They always rise to the top. They always land on their feet. Y'all know some of them people? It's a shame I ain't some of them people. But anyhow, some folk can always land on their feet. Naaman didn't know what failing was. However, turn to your neighbor and say, however. Now say it like you really mean it. However, after all these great things he did, the Bible says, but he was a leper. But is a conjunction which suggests that whoever you are, there's always a but somewhere in your life. New York Twin Towers, the pride of modern architect, but along came Osama bin Laden. Peter preached on one day, and on that day 3,000 joined the church, but he denied and cursed Christ 3 times. Paul was a great apostle. You hear him say, I am persuaded that nothing shall separate me from the love of God. You hear him saying, forgetting those things which are behind me, I press towards the mark of the prize of the high calling. You hear him saying, if God be for us, then who can be against us? You hear him saying, don't be ignorant, brethren. Behold, I show you a mystery. We shall not all sleep, but we shall be changed in a moment, in a twinkling of an eye. But Paul had this but in his life. He had this thorn in his flesh, and he cries out to the Lord, Lord, take it away from me. But God says, Paul, my grace is sufficient. Some things will not be removed from your life. Say, but my grace is sufficient. Some goals you may not achieve, but my grace is sufficient. You may not be healed, but my grace is sufficient. You may not have that house you want, but you got a roof over your head and beans on the table. My grace is sufficient. Is it all right if I tell you whatever the but in your life may be, storms may come and winds may blow, but never let go of the hope or the expectation that God can reverse any negative situation in your life. Listen. Sometimes God will work through someone else who has a higher quality of faith than you. Sometimes the answer to our problem is found in somebody else whose faith far outdistances our own. Many of us are where we are today not because of our goodness, but because of somebody else been praying for me. You do remember what Jesus told Peter, don't you? You didn't hear what I said. You do remember what Jesus told Peter. Jesus says to Peter, he says, Peter, the devil desires to keep you. In other words, the devil desires to have your soul. He says, but, oh, y'all ain't in here. He says, but, he didn't say, I have praying. He says, I have prayed. I have prayed for you, meaning he is constantly praying, but he wanted Peter to know that he had prayed for him in the past. He's praying for him in the he's praying for him in the present, and he's praying for him in the future. And that's why Job says, even when I'm dead, remember me. That's shouting news. Woo. There's a God who can cover you then just when you need him. No weapon formed against you shall prosper. You've never missed anything. But now go on a little bit further. You recall that there was a handmaiden. The Bible doesn't even give her name. The Bible doesn't even say who she was. The Bible just says that she was the handmaiden of Naaman's wife. Did y'all hear what I said? She said, he's not a Creflo Dollar. He's not a Benny Hinn. He's not a Joel Osteen. He's not a T.D. Jakes. You've never heard of him, but he is a prophet of the Most High God. He's not educated, but he's consecrated. He's not sophisticated. Sometimes he says ain't, and sometimes he uses verbs instead of nouns, but he's dedicated. He's not a physician or a pharmaceutical expert, but he's been anointed by the Most High God. You want to be cleaned out of the butts in your life, then stop looking for love in all the wrong places. Am I right about it? Presidents, lawyers, and doctors are not prophets. The president is a statesman, but the prophet, he's the man of the Most High God. The president has a council called the cabinet. There's the joint chief of staff, but the prophet has his secret closet. Do you hear what I'm saying? The closet that my grandmother had. She'd get in the closet and she'd say, Father, I stretch my hands to thee. No other help I know. Is it all right if I go just a little further? It's only when you are knocked down that you can be raised up. It's only when you go down that you can come up. It's only when you cry that you can appreciate laughter. It's only when you are broken that you can be made whole. Listen here. Don't you ever forget it. Naaman had to go and dip in the water 7 times. I said Naaman had to go and dip in the water 7 times. Why 7? 7 is God's divine perfection. 7 is God's divine completion. There are 7 days in the week. There were 7 men who lived to be more than 900 years old. You got 7 churches, 7 last plagues, 7 seals, 7 angels. Jesus said 7 words on the cross. Naaman had to dip 7 times. 1 for the patriarchs, prophets, judges, and apostles. 1 for the Father, Son, and Holy Ghost. One of these days won't be long. I can see it now. Storm clouds may rise in my life. Strong winds may blow. But one of these days I'm going to hear the voice of Jesus say, stand still, listen at me, all is well. And when the way gets rough and the going gets tough, I hear him say, well done, well done, well done, well done, well done. Is there anybody up in here who can stand with me and believe that when you get up, God's